You're listening to the Rawha, daily guidance for seekers with Shaykh Faraz Rabbani, who will be covering Imam Yusuf al-Nabahani's beautiful collection of 40 sets of 40 hadith of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, as well as Imam Zarnuji's guidance for seekers of knowledge regarding the ways of seeking knowledge. تعليم المتعلم طرق التعلم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد الداعي إلى صراط مستقيم صراط العلم والعمل واليقين وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه إلى يوم الدين. Alhamdulillah, in our Rawha sessions, we are completing our look at Imam Ghazali's masterly counsel to one of his close students. And this is advice for the way of knowledge and guidance, advice for not only students of knowledge on the imperative of living the knowledge that one learns, but also advice for every sincere believer. Because what is guidance but knowledge that is meant to guide one, that is meant to be lived, seeking Allah and the hereafter thereby. So we have been looking at a lengthy discussion in which one of the great Imams of Islamic spirituality, Hatem al-Asam, was asked by his teacher, Shaqiq al-Balkhi, after over 30 years of companionship, what did you benefit from my company? So he mentioned that he benefited 8 insights of guidance. And we've looked at the first few, and we reached number 5. الفائدة الخامسة أني رأيت الناس يذم بعضهم بعضا. He said the 5th insight is that I have seen that people each criticizes the other. وَيَغْتَابُ بَعْضُهُمْ بَعْضًا, and they backbite one another. Why? Because the human being is weak. And one way of preserving their own sense of security is to put up others down. Right? Their own sense of self, strength, etc. The one way of self-affirmation is to negate others' worth, others' circumstance. And people imagine that they'll find comfort in it. So he explains, فَوَجَدْتُ أَصْلَ ذَلِكَ مِنَ الْحَسَدِ فِي الْمَالِ وَالْجَاهِ وَالْعِلْمِ. He said, and I found that the basis of why people criticize one another and backbite one another is envy with respect to hasad in wealth, in status, jah, and in knowledge. And these are 3 of the things that people most envy about. People's wealth, and even more intense than wealth is status. Some people would rather be famous than wealthy. And the most dangerous attachment is to knowledge. Why? Because knowledge can now make you feel more superior than others and make you feel as if you're more deserving to affirm superiority from others. Even though knowledge should cause you to be humbled. He said, فَتَأَمَّلْتُ فِي قَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى. So he said, I reflected on the words of Allah Most High. نَحْنُ قَسَمْنَا بَيْنَهُمْ مَعِيشَتَهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Allah's words that it is we who have apportioned between them their livelihood in this worldly life. That's from Surah Az-Zukhruf, verse 32. That anything that people criticize one another and envious because they're critical, they backbite, they slander, and the other sins of speech, such as tale-bearing, etc., it goes back to envy, conscious or unconscious. And he said that I reflected on the words of Allah, that it is we, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has divided between them their livelihood in this worldly life. فَعَلِمْتُ أَنَّ الْقِسْمَةَ كَانَتْ مِنَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى فِي الْأَزَلِ. So I realized, عَلِمْتُ, I came to know, meaning I realized that this division, right, qisma is to divide something up. This division, this meaning this apportionment, right, to make something into portions, كانت من الله تعالى, was from Allah Most High, fil azal, in eternity. That it is exactly as it must be, because that's how Allah decreed for it to be. It says, فَمَا حَسَدْتُ أَحَدًا, so I never envied anyone. وَرَضِيتُ بِقِسْمَةِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى, and I was content with Allah's apportionment. And that's why they say that from the many harms of hasad, of envy, is that envy goes against tawheed, because against divine oneness, because the reality is that what you're envying in another was granted to them by Allah. Do you object to the decision to the divine decree? No. You shouldn't. Right? So it is either it's heedlessness or ignorance of a basic reality, that everything is بِقَضَاءِ اللَّهِ وَقَدَرِهِ, that everything is by Allah's decree and it is His destining. So what the person got was what Allah decreed. So the envy goes against acceptance of divine decree. It goes against the implications of divine attributes, of Allah's power, will, and knowledge. It goes against, you are in a state of opposition to Allah's act, because that act of giving is fi'lun min af'alillah. It's an act of the acts of Allah. So envy is a state of objection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unconscious objection to Allah, but it's objection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It also goes against tawheed, because that envy does not recognize the reality that Allah is the giver. And it's unconscious, it's a heedlessness, it's an ignorance of tawheed as well, because it is Allah who's revealed the Quran, and Allah has told us, "Ud'uni astajib lakum," call upon me and I will answer you. So if you want that blessing, right, if you envy because you want the blessing, then know that it's from Allah. It is Allah who gave it to that person, and if you wanted to, ask Allah for it. And there's nothing wrong with wanting a blessing another has. And it's an ignorance of tawheed at many other levels as well, that Allah answers dua. So all you have to do to seek that blessing is to ask for it for yourself. If you don't want it for yourself, but you want the other person to lose it, it's an ignorance of tawheed, because tawheed is not perfected in a believer. Faith in divine oneness is not perfected in a believer unless they have nush, unless they have concern for the good of others. None of you believes until لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you believes until they wish for others what they wish for themselves. So there's many harms. That's why hasad, the Prophet ﷺ, burns away good deeds like a raging fire burns away wood. Right? إياكم الحسد فإن الحسد يأكل الحسنات كما تأكل النار الحطب. Right? Beware of envy, because envy consumes, eats up good deeds as a raging fire consumes firewood. That's why he says, so I never envied anyone, and I was content with Allah's apportionment. And a simple thing, if you feel a pang of envy, make dua for the person you felt envy for, and immediately ask for that good thing for yourself, or the like of it. And sometimes you feel envious and you don't want the thing. So they say immediately, make dua for the person that Allah protect that blessing, preserve it, increase it, make dua for them. And then immediately, because sometimes, sometimes people are envious of something that they don't want. Right? If someone's driving a Lamborghini, and you don't even drive. But you just feel bad, how come they get everything? So you don't want the Lamborghini, because it won't fit in your parking spot in the garage in your condominium. It'll be too expensive. And you have miserly tendencies. So you don't want that. You just want something big. So ask Allah for what you want. Salullah min fadli. Ask Allah from His bounty. Right? But anytime you feel envy, this is one of the qualities that if you feel the envy, means that you need to nurture tawheed. The sixth point of benefit that Hatem al-Asam learned from his teacher, he said, realized from the teachings of his teacher, الفائدة السادسة أني رأيت الناس يعادي بعضهم بعضا. He said that I saw people at enmity with one another. لغرض وسبب, because of some aim or some cause. فتأملت في قوله تعالى إن الشيطان لكم عدو فاتخذوه عدوا. That Allah Most High says, truly, the devil is for you an enemy. So take him as an enemy. This is from Surah Fatir, the 35th Surah, verse 6. فعلمت أنه لا يجوز عداوة أحد غير الشيطان. So I realized that it is not permitted to have enmity to anyone other than the shaitan. Meaning, because our enmity is not to people. We are at enmity to actions. Right? To qualities. To states. So we don't hate our enemy. We hate their wrongdoing. We hate their enmity. Right? So we have no enemy in that sense, in the absolute sense, but the shaitan. No external enemy. Anyone we're at enmity with should be because of some action or some quality or some state. So you hate the action, not the actor. The quality, not the one who has it. The state, not the one who possesses it. So we hate oppression, not the oppressor. Right? We hate injustice, not the unjust. Etc. We hate imperialism, but not the imperialist. Right? And that would apply to leaders and everyone. The seventh point of benefit, الفائدة السابعة أني رأيت كل أحد يسعى بجد ويجتهد بمبالغة لطلب القوت والمعاش. That I have seen everyone, كل أحد, strive with resolve and exert their utmost effort, ijtihad, with the utmost striving, بمبالغة, right? They go to all kinds of extremes. لطلب القوت والمعاش, in seeking their provision and their livelihood. So much so, بحيث يقع به في شبهة وحرام, such that it causes them to fall into doubtful matters and to the impermissible. Gotta provide for myself. We need to, all these worldly fears. So people, they strive with high resolve, with the utmost of exertion of effort, and they go to all kinds of lengths. All of this. And fall in the wrong. وَيُذِلُّ نَفْسَهُ, and they humiliate themselves. They'll accept odd jobs if they have to, just to get a little more. وَيَنْقُصُ قَدْرَهُ, and they lower from their status. In our time, for example, someone has a secure job, they're fine, but just to make that extra little more, they work night shifts on Uber, and they do this and all kinds of things, which affects your own self-esteem, perhaps. Like, that you're doing all these extra things. They go into food delivery, all these things, not because they have to, just because they want to do that little extra. So it says, فَتَأَمَّلْتُ قَوْلَهُ تَعَالَى وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ رِزْقُهَا. I reflected on Allah's words in the Quran from Surah Hud, verse 6. There is no creature, right? And a dabba is any living creature. مَا دَبَّ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ, anything that stomps on earth. Right? مَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ, on earth, except that it is upon Allah to provide for it. Accidents happen and tragedies happen, but have you seen, and of course, in the normal state of things, that cat died of starvation out in nature. No, typically it doesn't happen. Right? How many people are dying of starvation in a normal state of affairs? Yes, they are even the hungry and the homeless must be getting some food somehow, otherwise they wouldn't be alive. What's the worst case scenario? You'll survive. Right? And yes, we ourselves feel it's a communal obligation to take care of the homeless and stuff. The very fact that they're still alive means that somehow food's getting to them. So he says, so I realized, فَعَلِمْتُ أَنَّ رِزْقِي عَلَى اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. So I realized that my provision is upon Allah Most High. وَقَدْ ضَمِنَهُ, and He has guaranteed it. فَاشْتَغَلْتُ بِعِبَادَتِهِ. So I busied myself with His worship, with His obedience. وَقَطَعْتُ طَمَعِي عَنْ سِوَاهُ, and I cut off my hopes for other than Him. And here, busying myself, meaning, what is your priority? People make their dunya their priority, and they fit in deen here and there. And to quote a friend of mine, that's not deen, that's decoration. Right? Whereas if you consider, why were you created? Right? This is why, what does Ibn Ata'illah say? اجتهادك فيما ضمن لك وتقصيرك فيما طلب منك دليل انتماص البصيرة فيك. You're striving for what was guaranteed for you, your provision. And you're falling short in what was sought from you, which is that you submit to Him. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهِ. They have not been commanded except that they submit to Allah. مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ, making their life transaction totally for His sake alone. Surah Al-Bayyinah, verse 5, 98:5. Right? You're striving for what was guaranteed for you, and you're falling short in what is sought from you, is a sure sign that the light of spiritual insight has been extinguished within you. And this does not mean that you don't take the means. Right? But what is our approach to life? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَابْتَغِي بِمَا أَتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةِ. Seek with all that Allah has given you the next abode. وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. Yet do not forget your share of this life. Right? So you put the eternal before the fleeting, the lasting over the perishing. الفائدة الثامنة, the 8th point of benefit. أني رأيت كل واحد معتمدا على شيء مخلوق. That I have seen all people relying on something created. بعضهم على الدينار والدرهم. Some on their money, on dinars and dirhams, on money. وبعضهم على المال والملك. And some rely on their wealth and their power. وبعضهم على الحرفة والصناعة. And some rely on their profession and trade. Well, I'm an engineer. I'm a lawyer. I can figure it out. Right? وبعضهم على مخلوق مثله. And some on another created being like them. Well, my dad. Like some Imam al-Haddad says, and he said, don't be like those who say, كان أبي. My father was such and such, right? Right? Or whoever else. فتأملت في قوله تعالى ومن يتوكل على الله فهو حسبه. And whoever places their trust upon Allah, then He is their sufficiency. What's understood from that too is that if you place your trust on any other than Allah, they will not be sufficient for you. They will fall short. Because reliance is a meaning, right? If you consider what does it mean to rely, right? And who is the one being relied upon? What are the qualities? What is reliance? And who is the one being relied upon? Anyone besides you is needy as well. Right? Any created being is needy, is dependent, does not have ability nor power. So you're relying on one needy, which is kind of silly. You're relying on one who cannot benefit you. That's also silly. You're relying on one who does not even have ability nor power. It cannot fulfill its own needs, let alone yours. Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and whoever places their trust upon Allah, then He is their sufficiency. No one else can fulfill your need. Inna Allah balighu amrih. Indeed, Allah makes His command, His affair come to pass. قَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدْرًا. And Allah has made for everything a destiny. And this is from Surah Al-Talaq, the 65th Surah, verse number 3. فَتَوَكَّلْتُ عَلَى اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. So I place my trust upon Allah Most High. فَهُوَ حَسْبِي. So He is my sufficiency. وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلِ. And what a great guardian He is. So these were the 8 insights of that Hatem al-Asam gleamed from Shaqiq al-Balkhi, his teacher. فَقَالَ الشَّقِيقِ. So Shaqiq al-Balkhi said, وَفَقَقَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى. May Allah grant you true success. إِنِّي قَدْ نَظَرْتُ التَّوْرَاةَ وَالْإِنْجِيلَ وَالزَّبُورَ وَالْفُرْقَانَ. Said, I have looked in, meaning read, the Torah and the Injil, the Gospels, and the Zabur and the Psalms, and the Furqan and the criterion, meaning the Quran. فوجدت الكتب الأربعة تدور على هذه الفوائد الثماني. And I've seen that these four revealed books revolve around these 8 meanings. فمن عمل بها كان عاملا بهذه الكتب الأربعة. So whoever acts upon them is acting on these 4 books. And just quickly to recap, what were the 8 points? Right. The first was that everyone has a beloved. That they choose. So you make righteous actions your beloved, and that's what you choose. Second, that all people follow their desire, right? And so and they follow it. He said, but I realized that the Quran is true. So and it tells us that whoever opposes their desires will have paradise. So I opposed my desires until my lower self became disciplined. The third, that he said, I saw all people are busy in gathering the dunya. But it's all perishing, and what remains is what with Allah. So he gave his dunya to benefit the poor and the needy. Right? To prefer the lasting over the perishing. The fourth is that people imagine their honor and rank is in something worldly. But he realized that the only true criterion for rank and honor, status and success is taqwa. So I chose taqwa as my badge of honor. The fifth we just took, that all people are envious, and that's why they criticize and think ill and backbite people. And this is from a type of objection to Allah. So he left envy and was content with Allah. The sixth, that people are at enmity because of some aim or some reason, but the only one worthy of your unconditional enmity is the shaitan. Be at enmity to no one else, oppose the wrong, whether of actions or states. And the seventh, that everyone strives their utmost in their worldly lives. People exhaust themselves, right, in their worldly gathering. Right? But what they are gathering is guaranteed by Allah. So have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regarding that, and seek Him as well. And this is one of the mistakes that parents make. That parents have a child, then now they're worried about the child. But the child doesn't need your wealth. The good of the child is not in your money. The good of the child is in your heart. Right? The good of the child is in your deen. Right? The good of the child, above all, the well-being of the child. There's a spiritual well-being of the child, there's a social well-being of a child, and there's a material well-being of the child. And the material well-being of the child is the least important of the three. If you can only give them one of the three, which do you give them? Give them spiritual well-being. You can give them two of the three, give them spiritual well-being and social well-being. That you treat them well, and you're kind and caring to them, etc. And then if you can give them material well-being, that's a supplement. But it's not required. Of course, it's a basic minimum, but who doesn't fulfill that minimum? Right? When they're able. Right? Which is why the sunnah of worldly striving, the Prophet said, فَأَجْمِلُوا فِي الطَّلَبِ. So that everything, that everyone's provision is guaranteed, so pursue with dignified restraint, with beautiful restraint. And finally, that everyone relies on something created, rely only on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the 8 insights of Shaqiq al-Balkhi. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He benefit us from these. And then Imam al-Ghazali says that, and we'll just read this because it's an important insight. He says, أيها الولد قد علمت من هاتين الحكايتين أنك لا تحتاج إلى تكثير العلم. He said, you know from these 2 stories that you don't need to keep increasing your knowledge. Right? This is talking to someone who already gained a lot of knowledge. Right? And of course, it's not saying don't learn more, but prioritize acting on what you know. What does Ibn Raslan say in the Zubad? وَعْمَلْ وَلَوْ بِعُشْرٍ كَالزَّكَاةِ. Act, even if it be with 1/10 of what you know. تخرج or تنجو بنور العلم من ظلمات. Act, even if it's with 1/10 of what you know, you will come out by the light of knowledge from manifold darknesses. But what's the light of knowledge? The light of knowledge is acting upon it. Right? And then he says, وَالْآنَ أُبَيِّنُ لَكَ مَا يَجِبُ عَلَى سَالِكِ سَبِيلِ الْحَقِّ. And he says, and now I'll tell you what is required for someone who wants to pursue the path of the true. Right? And this is either the truth or al-haqq is the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And he describes what is required for one, seeking a spiritual guide. So we look at that on Wednesday, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And what is spiritual training? Right? A lot of people work really hard on their deen and they say, now have a shaykh. So they imagine it's some kind of spiritual cruise control. Now I don't have to work hard, and they suffer. Well, that's a type of, it's like say, well, before I was taking care of my health, but now I'm in the hospital. But you don't go to the doctor. Right? You actually might get more sick, because there's more sick people in the hospital than outside it. Right? So Imam Ghazali shares some excellent guidance regarding that, and cautions against the wrong kind of company. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit us from this guidance. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa nabina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Thank you for listening to the Rawha, Daily Guidance for Seekers with Shaykh Faraz Rabbani. Help Seekers Hub give light to millions around the world by supporting us through monthly donations by going to seekershub.org/donate. Your donations are tax deductible in the US and Canada.